Hello everyone. My name is Valtteri Harmainen, and I am here to talk about how I got my first full-time Clojure job by creating it myself. First, something about me. I've been developing professionally since 2012, and I've been a part-time entrepreneur since 2011. And currently I'm working at First Beat Technologies, where we measure people's heart rate variability and do performance analytics for stress recovery and exercise. And that's very interesting, but this talk today is not about my current job at First Beat, but my previous job at the University of Jyväskylä. So even though I have some experience on software development, and especially web development, I've been doing Clojure for just about 2 years, so I still consider myself as a beginner when it comes to Clojure. Okay, but let's warm up with a question. This is from this year's State of Clojure survey. And the question is, what has been the most frustrating or has prevented you from using Clojure more than you do now? Can anyone remember the answer? Or what's on the top of the list? To me it was actually, sorry? No. Okay, well, kind of. Okay, so the most frustrating, over 43% responded that convincing coworkers, company, and clients has prevented them from using Clojure more than they do now. And I can relate to this because this was also my situation. Back in 2017, I was working at a consultancy company at the time as a Java and Node.js developer. But then I found Clojure, I watched some Rich Hickey videos and started doing my own hobby projects with Clojure, and I completely fell in love with it. And of course I wanted to start doing everything with Clojure. And I tried to talk to my colleagues and convince them that we should do some project here with Clojure and ClojureScript. But I guess that because I was a completely beginner at the time, and I didn't really have anything to show that what I had actually achieved with Clojure, because I had just dabbled some personal projects and such. So I probably wasn't very convincing after all. But as we can see from the results, also other people find that convincing others is very difficult. And I think it's extremely difficult if you are a beginner. But I really wanted to use Clojure in my day job. So what options did I have? An obvious solution would be changing jobs. But I live in a relatively small town in the middle of Finland, and we don't have great places like Siili, where they have that kind of onboarding program that we just heard about. So there aren't actually, if there are like none beginner level Clojure jobs, or at least then there weren't in my area. And the chances were quite slim that there would probably ever be an open dream position for me. And this is actually where I'm seeing a recurring pattern in the Clojure community. People get really excited about Clojure, and they feel very pumped, and they want to do everything with Clojure. But they can't find beginner-level jobs in their area, and they can't convince their companies to start using Clojure in their day job. So this is where they end up in, and I was there as well. But how to get out of there? I started thinking that since everybody needs software nowadays, and if I just found an organization that isn't necessarily a software company, then they wouldn't care what language I would be writing the software in. So So if you think this way, then like any software project could be a potential Clojure job. And I started asking my old friends and old colleagues around and asking if they knew anyone who would have needs for software, because I knew that I could develop software. I had been doing web development for years, but I was just a completely beginner with Clojure. And luckily, the first when I was in the university as a student, there was this project that's not a software project, but they need software, and they had that kind of needs that they needed a new version of their system, and I convinced them to hire me to work in the University of Jyväskylä, and I promised them that okay, I will deliver you the new version of the software. And so actually I got out of the lost persons area by actually changing jobs, but it wasn't like I would be going to a team of Clojure developers and learn there, but it was more like having the whole responsibility of the development project, so that's a different kind of beast. This is the project I got to work with. It's called Lipas. It's a public and open database of Finnish sports facilities, and it's run by University of Jyväskylä, and it's publicly funded by the Ministry of Education. And the team that runs the system is really small. So basically there is just a project manager and one person working with the data. And then there was me, and my job was to develop the new version of the system. And I got to work with Lipas for 1.5 years. And eventually it's now online, and since the project was publicly funded, we decided that it would be nice to open source all the code that we did, because it's funded with taxpayers' money eventually. And here is a screenshot of the Lipas web application. So basically the idea is that, well, it's a very simple system in that sense, like most of the systems are. It's kind of a front end to a database. And well, there's a special feature that we have some spatial location data. So we need to have a map interface where the data producers enter the data in, and they have to also fill in the geometries of the sports facilities. So, but basically, it's a quite simple system, and I decided, of course, that we would use Clojure all the way. So it's ClojureScript in the front end with reframe, and Clojure in the back end. But I'm not going to go any deeper into the technical details, but I'm very happy to discuss them after this talk. And since all the code is publicly available on GitHub, you can just go and have a look as well. Okay, but this is the actually interesting part in this talk. So a little bit of reflection of what went well in this kind of model where we had just 3 people, 1 developer working and developing in-house. But let's start with the positives. So working or convincing the University of Jyväskylä to hire me in-house worked out really well. Because another option would have been that I would have worked as a consultant through my own company or something like that, but that would have felt a bit unfair, because I was a completely beginner in Clojure, and I would be spending some significant time learning Clojure and ClojureScript. And I didn't want to charge for my learning, even though many companies do that as well. But it felt fair that they hired me in-house, and we worked there together, and I felt very committed to the work. And learning as you go, it was actually far less painful than what I would have thought. I took a risk when I chose to implement the system in a programming language that I didn't have much experience in. But learning Clojure was really fun, and I was extremely motivated to do that. So I was ready to work double hard because that was the thing that I really wanted to do. Open source, positive pressure. Yeah, so it was a good decision to publish the code because I see that open source works as a mental barrier. I didn't want to publish any kind of crap in the GitHub because everybody would see it. I don't know if that's a Finnish thing or something, but and also it was fair because it was publicly funded. Working as if we had more developers. Yeah, so I was used to working in bigger teams where we could have like from 5 to 20 whatever developers, and I had learned some team working skills, and I wanted to employ those team working skills even though I was working alone. That kept me kind of sane, and also we had a slight chance that we could have hired another developer, another junior Clojure developer there, even though we never actually did that, but there was a slight chance that we could have got a little bit more money and we could have hired someone else there. So it was a good idea to have the documentation and all kinds of team working flows there already, and it's a good habit anyways. Simplicity and fast feedback cycle. Well, when you are working alone, you don't have a lot of options. You must keep the things very, very simple so that you keep progressing all the time. And you need, with the fast feedback cycle, I mean that since we didn't really know in the beginning that what the system would eventually look like, so we wanted to start getting feedback from the users of the system really early, and so on. And Clojure and ClojureScript worked out really well. I found especially that sharing specs and code and libraries between the backend and front end was a major benefit, because I didn't want to do any double work there. So there were no problems with that. And there was also help available. I was very pleasantly surprised by how friendly the community really was. I didn't get really badly stuck at any point because there was always help available online on Slack. But there were also certain challenges. Small team. It is also a vulnerable team, because if I got sick or was absent for any other reasons, there would be no progress in the development whatsoever. So, but this is just something that if you're the only developer, then you and your employer just have to accept this kind of risks. No way getting around it if your team is extremely small. Responsibility, uncertainty, stress, lack of feedback. Yeah, at first I was extremely happy that, well, yay, now I can eventually make all the technical decisions, and no one else will be forcing me to use some stupid libraries and so on. But then pretty soon I realized that oh no, I really have to make all the technical decisions, and well, when you have that kind of responsibility, the counter side is that there's always some stress involved. Someone is expecting something from you, and you have to deliver. And I had all kind of thoughts in my mind. Okay, what if I pick the wrong thing or do the wrong thing? Oh no, all kinds of uncertainties, and there were many uncertainties because I was a beginner. a lack of feedback. Like here, well, we got feedback from the end users and so on. That was not a problem, but since I was the only developer, I didn't get any technical feedback from other developers that I'm very used to when working in bigger teams. That was actually, well, I think it was one major source of uncertainty, because we didn't have any experienced developers telling you that you are doing the right thing. And at one point I was actually so uncertain that I hired a consultant from Metosin to come and work with me for one day. And then Jarppe, who gave us an incredible speech last year here, came by train from Tampere to Jyväskylä and worked with me for one day and gave me some practical tips that how I could improve the code. But more importantly, he gave me the confidence that I was doing all right. Depth versus width versus outcome. This was maybe the biggest personal problem with this kind of working model, because by this I mean that as I was doing everything myself, and it would have been super interesting to always dive deeper and deeper into particular areas of software development, like exploring what kind of things this database can do and what is the best way to do this in Clojure and so on. But on the other hand, I had to keep the progress going on all the time, because if I couldn't just spend too much time investigating some individual thing, because then there would have been no progress. So, and balancing between these kind of things, because I get very easily interested very deeply in certain topics, and I really had to hold myself down to okay, this is probably not the best decision or the most elegant way to do this, but this works, so this is good now. And make that kind of things, and that was quite hard for me, and I really had to control and monitor the overall progress, and I actually kept a little Trello board where I put tasks for myself and tried to reflect that if I was doing well, or did I achieve the things I wanted to achieve. Managing my own and other people's expectations. This is quite generic software development problem, and I think that because in the most projects I worked in, the software and software development is actually, it has been the easy part. Technical things are always quite easy to tackle and so on. Eventually you just have to learn some things, and people problems are the hard ones actually. And what I think software development usually essentially is managing people's expectations and uncertainties about what is the project that we are doing at the moment. And that actually took quite a lot of my time away from learning and development. This is usually what the service designers do, that they try to communicate and analyze that what is the product that we should actually be, product or service that we should be building at the moment. But since we didn't have a service designer, we had to do the design work also on the fly, and I think that approximately 50% of my time went into the design work and 50% of my time went into actual coding. So that's also something that you have to be ready to do if you're working this way. Not just development, but also maintenance and support. So if you're the sole developer of the system, it's very likely that you're also going to be the sole maintainer of the system later on. And I'm actually still maintaining Lipas through my own company, even though I'm now working at FirstBeat. But I see this, it's a challenge, but it's also a good thing, because then when you're developing, you cannot make really bad decisions, because it will be you on the both side of the pole in the picture. It's like you're blaming what have you done, and on the other hand you're, oh no, what have I done? And this all the bullets here, it means that there are quite many things to keep in one head, and you have to be ready to organize your work and control that where you're spending the time and so on. That's quite difficult, actually, at least to me. But if you manage to win all those challenges, then I think that you can actually start calling yourself a truly senior developer. I see senior developer as someone who understands all the aforementioned challenges and those aspects of software development and still can deliver great outcomes. And I like to compare it to making music because it doesn't help if you're the fastest guitar player or the most talented drummer, because that doesn't make really interesting music. After all, it might be an impressive technical achievement, but what comes to music, then people usually want to hear interesting music. And I chose this picture because that kind of a person, they cannot be the fastest guitar players or the best drummers, but they need to know how to make music. Because I think that music is that way similar to software, that they're both on some level mainly psychological phenomenon. This is related to my idea that software development is mainly managing the people's expectations and so on. Each person might have a different kind of image in their head about the software and what it's supposed to do, and some other person might have completely different kind of ideas what that might be. And same comes to music. People feel and experience it in different ways. Okay, so probably the key takeaways from this talk is that it's possible to create your own Clojure job, even if you are a beginner. It's not the easiest way. It's definitely a way less stressful to just onboard to see this program or whatever. But if that's not a possibility, then this is one way to do it. And if I can do it, then probably most of you can do it as well. It's possible to learn Clojure and work professionally at the same time and still deliver great outcomes. This was very relieving for me to learn. I wasn't perfectly confident when I started the project, but now I am. I think that I have gained confidence to work as a professional Clojure developer from now on. Yeah, there are certain risks and challenges involved if you decide to do what I did. But there is help available if you need it, and don't hesitate to use it. The community is very friendly, and there are also usually people on Slack 24/7, and they are very helpful. And also there are consultancies all over the world who do Clojure, and at some point it might be a good idea to buy some consulting if you're really uncertain or too certain that you're doing fine. But if you're willing to challenge yourself and accept this kind of risks, I see this kind of working as a good way to learn how to be a true professional and get a really wide perspective of the whole software development and issues involved in that. So, thank you. Do we have time for questions?
Thank you very much for your talk.
There.
I've been in a similar situation myself, so I can feel your pain, I think. you said that you had to keep many things in your own head because you had to solve all the things. How did this influence your choice of technology stack? Did you choose the simple things specifically, or if you can elaborate on that, that would be interesting.
Yeah, it definitely influenced there. So I couldn't do everything from scratch myself, even though from learning perspective that would have been fun to do. And but I used a lot of existing pre-built building on standing on shoulders of giants and so on. But yeah, that was really difficult to try to keep the balance that, okay, I need to learn how this thing works, but sometimes it was easier to just use something as a black box and build on top of it, and maybe later then understand that how does it actually work. Yeah, but it's hard.